To all, one more time. We're live. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on Mindset Monday, which is where we touch on something very deep to the mind and get you in the right direction. Though we are doing a recap on Futuristic Friday, but I would love to first say good morning to my lovely and wonderful co pilot, Stephanie. How are you doing today?
Morning, Manyumba. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and hope you are having a godly blessed week, highly productive, and we wish that to everyone. And to you, Stephanie, definitely a godly blessed week as well. And thank you for joining us. Or should I
Thank
say,
you.
I'm the one joining you effectively, but this is that little space I like to take an ownership of. So today, Stephanie, we're going to be talking about two things on Mindset Monday. One of them is going to be a recap on what we call connectivity policy from a talk by Strive Masia, who actually had a conversation on Bloomberg's New Economy Forum, New Economy Gateway Africa Summit, where he talked about connecting Africa's next generation. That's going to be interesting. And we're going to talk about, Stephanie, the journey from being a novice to a master. We call this the transformation process of anything. So, with all that in respect, let's get started on today's journey. So today, as we talked about, there was a conversation that was had on Bloomberg's New Economy Gateway Africa Summit by Strive Masia, where he talked about connecting Africa's next generation. And this is a deep conversation, Stephanie. I think to all of us, connectivity has become an important part of the journey, actually being able to connect. So, for everyone, whatever key takeaways you have from this, please, by all means, share it, share it, share it. It is extremely important, and share this with everybody. So, getting into this, the one thing I wanted to start off with was some data I shared last week, and this has to do with the ZICTA 2022 National ICT Summary. Thank you to our news team for putting this together for us. But we have seen that things such as radio are starting to wither away. Radio is still about 35% of Africa of Zambia's media usage. You can see that about 35% of households now only have radio, as opposed to 15%. Gone are the days, Stephanie, when we used to all have radios. Remember, you used to be able to go to someone's house and you used to always find a radio. Or am I just that old, Stephanie?
Definitely. I know, right?
Yeah, I think I don't know what you just said. Definitely do, because I did ask you. I did say am I that old? So possibly I could be that old. You
No,
could be
I thought
saying
you're talking
definitely.
about radio.
No, I know. I got. I'm just pulling your leg. Though I am.
Yeah.
I'm no longer officially a youth like you people. I'm statistically middle aged now. That's where I am. So yes,
Wow, yeah.
we are now at the point where only 1 in 3 houses. It actually used to be 6 in 10 houses in Zambia had radio. Now it's 1 in 3. 5 years ago, it was 4.5, and I think just a few years before that, it was half the houses. So we're getting down to a point where there are less and less radios in houses. Television is still kind of at that wobbly place where you can see it's really sitting at about 1 in 3 houses have a television. Computer ownership is only at about 1 in 10, but that's starting to grow 7.1% to 9.5%, but it's still a slow growth. One of the policies that's probably helping is that people being given laptops from work, and also University of Zambia also has that policy where they, or even just with your student loan, sometimes comes a machine that people are able to get. Ownership of mobile phones is where the biggest connectivity is. Remember that the reason we have TVs and radios and all these things is to connect with the outside world in some way, shape, or form, or to interact with the outside world besides having to physically go outside. And the most effective device in connectivity with the outside world is mobile phone ownership. 80% of Zambian households have mobile phones. And Wi Fi connection now we're looking at is about 33%. 1 in every 3 Zambian homes has wireless. So you can actually see that it's actually becoming equally as important to access homes. If you look at it from an urban perspective, about 43% of urban homes are the ones that have 43% of urban homes are the ones that have radios, while 67% of urban homes have television. So before we start thinking this, it's mainly a rural issue. that's actually controlling the television usage. And if you're looking at computer ownership, 1 in 5 urban homes has a computer in there. So you can actually see that's actually quite useful. And also 92 homes have got mobile phones, and 59% of all urban homes have got wireless. So when we're talking about connecting the next generation, here's some baseline statistics. Now, if you're looking at it in terms of access to mobile phones, ownership of mobile phones, ownership is a little bit different. 51% of the population own mobile phones. Okay, so only about half of us, and out of the mobile phone owners, only 1/3 of them are smartphone owners. So really, only about 1 in 6 Zambians has a smartphone. And as much as we think it's actually normal that everyone has a smartphone, it's actually 1 in 6 of us that actually has a smartphone in terms of the adult population. And out of in terms of the percentage of individuals who know how to use a computer, about it's close to about 1 in 8. Somewhere about 1 in 8, 1 in 9 Zambians knows how to use a computer. And if you're looking at individuals, you're looking at individuals with internet access. Only 25% of the nation have access to internet, access to social media, 87% of the internet users. So if you're going to use the internet, most of you are using social media. And in terms of access to e-commerce, only 12% of internet users are utilizing e-commerce. So we're not truly there yet. And internet users who are aware of the risks of the online world, only about 43%. This is a bit lower than last time. Now, in terms of digital skills, we have about 11.5% of the population that's able to use a computer. And what are they able to do on a computer? Of the computer using population, only about 9% of people who can use a computer can program a computer. About 34% of computer users can use the internet. In terms of knowledge of activation and social media platforms and web browsers, 39.4% of internet users, in terms of the ability to use digital financial services independently, 87% of people who do use digital financial services, they know how to do it. But in terms of computer users, only about 1 out of every 5 know how to use a spreadsheet. About 1 in every 3 knows how to use email, and about 1 in 2 knows how to move a computer folder. Here's a question I want to ask Stephanie. What do you do on a computer if you don't know how to move a folder? Why do you have one? Or,
Why
how do
on
you,
here?
and even if we say able to use one, how are you able to use one if you don't know how to copy and paste a folder? That's where I get a bit dodgy about this. So on the survey, you said I can use a computer, and then when asked, can you move a folder, you don't know what that is. I start to shake my head about that question. But
And
anyway,
yeah. It
so
is
you're saying?
unfortunate that, when you go to school, I think the first courses you're going to learn is on how to use a computer. They'll try and, I saw people who really never knew. So here's somebody who owns a computer, but a laptop per se, but they can't, they can't open it. They don't know where to start from. And I'm like, but why own a laptop in the first place? And why learn about it at college level? I mean, maybe it's the poverty levels. Maybe are parents really able to expose their children to such technologies at a young age? How if you've got 7 children, are you able to buy them all one laptop at a go, or maybe at least at a certain age? So maybe those are some of the things that also attribute to not knowing.
No, it's true. We have to also remember that there isn't even a wide scale electricity usage in this country. Not every person has access to electricity. So I think the first thing we need to always work on is access to electricity. That actually starts to open up a lot more. Once you have access to electricity, a lot of your life transforms. So I think we must always remember that. Now, in terms of barriers to smartphone ownership, the biggest barrier was the cost of a smartphone. That's a difficult part. And remember that a smartphone opens your world up to a lot. You get to use digital applications for a lot of things. You can now watch stuff, send stuff, do stuff. You can even start doing work. Smartphones are one of the most powerful tools that has been made to modern man. In fact, they have transformed society in totality. So we have to really work on making sure that smartphones are universally accessible to people by making sure that we either bring them in at a slower cost. The good thing is that Chinese have created cheaper ones, and also India. India has worked on creating cheaper ones. So once we can get past the cost barrier, you can find a lot more people become connected to the system. Other thing that we're looking at also is digital financial services. The challenges using digital financial services is insufficient money, scams, and system failures. Those are the top three issues that people face when using digital financial services. Reasons for not using the internet, I don't know how to use it, was number one by far. And two, I don't have a device to access it. Those are the main ones. And incidences of online risk, the top three issues were fake news, scams, and adult inappropriate content. I think we all know what that is. We're adults enough to talk about that at a different time, but adult inappropriate content. And obviously, challenges with doing e-commerce with people is that delayed deliveries and misrepresentation of goods and under delivery, while barriers to using financial services online is most people don't have money, they have not registered. Well, the people don't use it, don't have money, they have not registered, and they have a preference to use cash. So here's a statistic that came out recently as of 2023. 40% of Africans now have access to the internet. This number, Stephanie, was 1% in 2020. So just 23 years ago. In other words, 23 years ago, Stephanie, was the age that somebody who has just recently become able to vote was born. That was the time. There's some people at Money FM who are near this age. I'm not going to point fingers. Who are near this age. Don't sell yourself out, Stephanie. Don't sell yourself
I'm
out.
sure.
But yes, this is how much Africa has transformed. We've gone from 1% of the population being able to use the internet to now 40% of the population. So we're talking about a continent that's really moving fast in internet connectivity. So Strive Masia was actually having an interview about this, and here are some of the issues that he brought out. He said the next stage we have to start working on is cloud computing and cybersecurity. And he said, right now we're at a situation where internet has become so widely spread. We've talked about it there where we said 59% of urban households now have access to Wi-Fi. And we're now starting to see that 1 in 3 Zambians has access to the internet now. We've gone from a number where basically no one had access to the internet just about 20, 30 years ago, now to everyone. So that's one generation. That's all changed. So he says, now we have to start working on digital infrastructure. This is where fiber becomes important. And he calls this digital and telecoms plumbing. So when everyone starts building houses, it's important to build pipes to bring water into those houses. So effectively, everyone is now starting to access the internet. So therefore, it's important to make sure that the digital infrastructure that allows for the flow of data, the same way we look at the flow of water or the flow of electricity, to move from one house to the other. So this is why it's very important for all these fiber investments that are supposed to be made. Fiber is an extremely important thing. Seeing Elon Musk come in with digital satellites, that's important as well. But he's also saying that one of the most important things is also data centers. Because the problem is now that we start doing everything digitally, we're no longer doing things on paper as much. So therefore, just like we're doing this show digitally, Stephanie, we have to record it somewhere. So where's the storage space where we're going to be recording the video for all of this? So this is what things like Facebook and all that have done for us, but we need domestic data centers. So that we can store all this, because a lot of our life's work is going to be in data format. But in order to do that also, Stephanie, we need strong data protection. You've seen the amount of people whose Facebook pages are getting hacked these days. It was sad to see the Bank of Zambia's Facebook page get hacked. It was almost embarrassing. But this is how tough it is to protect things, and that's not an in Zambia thing. So we can't even point it here. That's not something that's domesticated in Zambia. But they are talking about the fact that we need to start having domestic data centers so that we can start storing some of these things. He talked about the fact that Liquid is now working with with AWS, Google, to try and see if they can get some of their data centers in Africa. as well. So you can see it's important. We do have digital laws that are now helping that if somebody's running a small business, then even their accounting information, their data of their business should be held domestically. App data, whenever somebody's doing any app development in Zambia, should be held domestically. So digital infrastructure is going to be part of the next generation of investment that needs to be done to help support digital services being used. We're talking about digital financial services that are also being used. One of the things he also talked about is that Africa needs patient capital. Some of the mistakes that we're starting to get is that we get very short-term capital that comes into Africa. We need that long-term patient capital. So that's why he was talking about raising money from sovereign wealth funds. I think we saw a visit from the Qatar Investment Fund that actually came in to visit our president. Those are the kinds of investment funds we need to start having, because sovereign wealth funds are very patient with their capital. They're able to wait a lot longer than Wall Street. Wall Street does want their rate of return in the next couple of years, and they've become more and more short-sighted. So, in other words, for us to enter and to build high capacity, or for us to see high capacity services like Google, AWS, Microsoft, and Netflix, we need to make sure that we have a lot more. Speaking of which, Stephanie, yesterday I think I did watch what was it called, Super 4. The new animation series that's based in a futuristic Lusaka about those 4 superhero girls who are held by, is it Mama K? Who actually watched it for the first. I actually enjoyed it, by the way. I'm actually looking forward to seeing the next episode. I actually enjoyed it. But yes, we need to be able to start developing content like that and hosting it here, because streaming is becoming a new thing, a new way of people watching content here. The other thing he also pointed out was public-private relationships, public-private partnerships, in order to be able to develop it. And he said, in order for us to have that, the reason why foreign investors who are trying to bring in digital infrastructure, they need boots on the ground. And they need to build direct relationships. They need, and he said, look, in order to do that, there also needs to be an enabling environment of friendly policy, not hostile policy towards businesses. Not when you build fiber lines, the government of that country now says, right, we have now taken these, they belong to us. So he's talking about that's how you attract people to come and help invest in things like fiber lines. Those are very important parts of the infrastructure, because in Zambia, the ICT sector is one of the fastest growing sectors. And also Africa, and it's also important to not only connect a nation, but also to interconnect nations. Because when you heard Strive Masia talking, he's actually created a Cape to Cairo line. The same view that Cecil John Rhodes had with the railway system, he's done it with data, where they've actually created a Cape to Cairo connection of getting all the way from the south to the northern part of Africa, and created a nice heartbeat line so that we can interconnect the nations. Because if data can also flow directly between Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, so many of these countries, if data can connect, then a lot more commerce and activity can start to connect. So that's a very important line as well. Now, part of what he's talking about in terms of his vision is that he said 40 years ago, 75% of Africans had never heard a telephone ring. I want you to think about that. 75% of Africans had never heard a telephone ring before. Now 75% of Africans have mobile phones. So in 2 generations, this is the change we have seen. This is how rapidly Africa is transforming. And I said the internet is on track to do that in the next 5 to 10 years because of the rate of investment that they're doing. But the capital that's still needed is across the whole value chain. We need cybersecurity, e-commerce, payment systems, AI. So I want you to think about this like what we call the picks and shovels. That whenever you see people rushing to start mining, if you see people to rush to start mining gold, Stephanie, what's the most profitable thing you can do whenever you see people trying to mine gold? What's the most profitable thing you can do?
Nice question. I think advertise using social media.
Sell them shovels.
Yeah.
The most profitable business in a mining boom is the person who's selling picks and shovels. Because everyone who's rushing to mine is going to buy their picks and shovels. They have no risk of if they discover gold or not. They make a lot of
Mm.
money just simply on the fact that you're buying the picks and shovels. So the best thing you can do in a data boom is also things like cybersecurity services. Everyone's going to need that. E-commerce, because people are going to go online to do business. Do you know that in China, one of the biggest businesses, Stephanie, is women, and especially younger Chinese women, who sit on social media doing lives, doing makeup tutorials and selling makeup on lives. Instead of our people who are busy joking about each other on lives, you could actually be doing that. It's actually one of the most lucrative ways to sell makeup, that the big makeup brands in China hire influencers now. They actually acquire their channels to sell them. The same way people used to do TV infomercials, now they're
Mm.
doing social media lives. Hopefully you're taking notes. Hopefully that's you taking notes, Stephanie, so that we can start
Exactly.
seeing your live channel and doing that as well. But in order to
Yeah.
do that, you need fast internet, you need secure internet, you need payment systems. So somebody also needs to have a quick way that they can receive payments, deploy the products, and make sure that they're not under delivering, they're serving the right products, they're not misrepresenting. Remember, those are the barriers that Zambians are having. So we need to fix
Yeah.
the infrastructure around that so that we can have a lot more people who are deciding to use social media to do live tutorials for makeup, people who are doing live tutorials for either clothing, whatever. I think I saw a young lady exhibiting. I remember walking past a young lady exhibiting waist trainers once. I'm not going to say who, but these are things that you could do on social media. But you need
Yeah.
the infrastructure to do that, and that gives people the ability to make money by themselves in a much faster way. He also talked about the potential for artificial intelligence, saying artificial intelligence is expected to add $30 trillion to the global GDP in the next 10 to 20 years. Now, AI will start to be infused into things. Okay, so right now I'm in a group where somebody was actually showing us how people are creating pictures of themselves or new like profile pictures of themselves using artificial intelligence. Now that's different to
Mm.
photography. So a way that you can actually create your own profile utilizing artificial intelligence, that's a big thing. So AI is going to start getting infused into a lot of work and services. And AI will also start to support the emergence of new services. So he's saying that we're just at the beginning of AI. Where we were at the beginning of the internet in the 90s is where we are at AI. The internet was an idea, it was an experiment. People were playing with it in the 90s. Today, it is a part of life. It is a way of life. And he's saying artificial intelligence is
Yeah.
going to be a part of that. And we all need to start learning it faster than we think. And he's also talking about how entrepreneurs, now he was asked a question, how can entrepreneurs keep up in a world where Africa is behind? And he says, look, it depends on how we see ourselves as African entrepreneurs. It's governments, the older generation, investors, who tend to have a very backwards view of Africans. But the new generation, we're better educated, better connected than other generations. We just don't see it. And he said it's also the importance is also the perspective you see of Africa. Do you see Africa as a land of growth and opportunities? Do you see Africa as a land of struggle and pain? Now, that's a good question to
Mm.
throw out even to our audience. How do you see Africa? Do you see even Zambia? Do you see it as a land of growth and opportunities, or do you see it as a land of struggle and pain? Do you see Zambia by what it can become, or do you see Zambia by what it's struggling through? And that'll determine the way you approach how you approach opportunities in this country. And then finally, he said, look, what is the role that governments can play? Well, it's not really finally. There was one more point, but he said, what is the role that governments can play? And he said, look, Africa needs to develop an ecosystem. We need to
Exactly.
make sure that we build the right ecosystem, the right environment for entrepreneurs to be able to experiment and try. He said Africa is attracting less FDI than Singapore. That's only 4 million people. That's a very sad statistic, people. As a continent,
Wow.
we're,
Yeah.
we're really attracting very low levels. And he says we need to have conversations with the global community about what it is they're looking for in our investments. Also, one of the things that helps, by the way, and I'm going to add to it, is that if we actually have businesses on the ground that have grown, most international investors are comfortable investing in already established growing businesses and joining them as an equity partner. than having to come into Africa and start one. So we need to encourage domestic entrepreneurship and domestic enterprise so that we give a conduit for the international investor community or the international business community to do business with. And it doesn't mean they have to buy out our local businesses. What it can also mean is that they can partner with our local businesses. I'll give you a simple example. Hypothetically, say Money FM wants to start a new thing. They don't have to be bought. We don't have to be bought out by an international body. We can partner with them to offer a new service into Zambia. So, but they only feel comfortable when they're already existing businesses. So that's one of the things we need to do to be able to attract more FDI into the system. We need already existing activities. We need to also, as I said, have a conversation, but we also need more venture capital into Africa, because we can't keep relying on loans for businesses. We always talk about access to capital, but we need more patient capital with our businesses, because they need that ability to have somebody who's going to take the risk with them. The bank may lend money to you at a specific risk, but it does not collaborate with you on the risk you are taking. And he also talked about the fact that we need domestic capital. We need to mobilize our savings into startup funds, such as countries like China did. So even locals, when I keep saying what will develop Zambia is locals need to start saving more and investing more. And the more money we channel into our own investment markets, the more it starts to now ripple into our business markets, because it makes capital cheaper for our business operators and our business and our innovators. And finally, he talked about the fact that Africa's next generation has got great ambition. He says we have no option but to grow Africa the way China did. We have no option, or else we're going to have a youth unemployment crisis. Well, we're already having one, by the way. So now what happens if we don't grow our economy fast enough? We will. And we need to invest in the skills of the next generation. We must make it easier for them to develop their ideas into companies. So really all that happens, Stephanie, that is employment. And I want you to think about the room you're sitting in now, Money FM as a radio station. It was an idea. And it was an idea turned into a company. And as a result, it generates revenue and it pays employees salaries. Okay. It's able to generate a revenue that can pay salaries, that can pay suppliers, and that can generate a profit. That is what an idea being turned into a company does. So it's not about policies out there. It's about getting people to be able to turn ideas into companies. And he did say it's extremely important for us to invest in STEM. So this is very important that people need to be able to think about going forward. So that's our little introduction for the future of the next generation. Finally, Stephanie, today I wanted to talk about the transformation process, because we've been having this conversation about the power to change. And to all of you who've been following this, I've been really harping on this. And just before we get into this, people, just also remember, give us your thoughts on connecting Africa. What do you think we need to be doing to better connect the next generation of Zambia? Give us a comment, give us a tool, give us a shout. We'll be able to share it and talk about it. What do you think we as a nation need to be doing to be able to better create connectivity? Because when there's more connectivity, we can have more commerce. And the more commerce we can have, the more prosperity we can create. How do we get people to be more connected and therefore than they already are, and in a healthy way, people? I know one of the things we don't talk about connecting Africa's next generation is the the psychological and social negative impacts of excessive connectivity. Okay, we've seen it in the Western world where depression levels, cyberbullying, all these things are up higher than we've ever imagined. It's extremely important for us to think about that very carefully. Now, going into that, Stephanie, we've been talking about the power to change, and I wanted to always remind people, power is the ability and the ability to affect and influence a desired outcome. Desire is longing, hoping, and expressing. So when you make a New Year's resolution to do something, you are expressing a desire. But when you are having the power to implement it, that's a different story. So how do we go from wanting something to actually being able to make it happen? That is the difference. That is what the power to change. This is a book by Pastor Craig Groeschel, when he talks about mastering habits that matter the most. We've been in this topic about training and not trying. That's extremely important. That actually builds onto this. And we have some of the comments that are coming in on training and not trying. That's extremely important. And we've been on this conversation of discipline. We've been talking about the disciplines of the wealthy. This is a survey I've shared many times. The Ramsey Solutions survey, the study of millionaire mindsets and the millionaire next door. This is very important. And we talked recently about 6 strategies you can utilize to improve your willpower, to use less willpower. Select and commit to a philosophy. Ritualize your activities. Make grand financial and time gestures. Work with other people. Execute like a business and embrace periodic downtime. These are important factors that we need to look at. We talked about habit execution. That, Stephanie, it's more important to do the habit than it is to get the outcome. It's more important to exercise than it is to wait for yourself to lose weight. It's more important to save and invest than to expect wealth. The expectation of the outcome is what leads to disappointment, but the action is really what's really important as well. And then we also talked about the true victory is actually executing a habit. And the mindset shifts you need to have are being journey minded rather than destination minded, being process minded rather than product minded, being system minded rather than scoreboard minded, and being input minded rather than outcomes minded. Okay, so always look at what you can put in. What system have you developed? What processes must you undertake? And what journey must you be looking for? These are very important, and you must celebrate actually doing the thing than getting the outcome. But today I want to talk about what I talk about 4 panels before I get into some of the questions as we wind up here. Is four stages of mastery. So there are 4 stages, Stephanie, that a person goes through to be able to master something. And this is where a lot of mistakes are made by people. And I call these the trainee, the apprentice, the journeyman, and the master. The final one there says the master. And this is kind of around the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours principle, where a person has to do something for a long period of time to become a master. And people don't like this, but this is the reality. So what does your mind and your body go through when you're getting to this mastery process? Well, Stephanie, let's take a look at a person who's been doing something for the first 10 to 100 hours. Okay, in your first, and this is a short period of time, they first have to be supervised constantly. They have to do tasks that are predictable, and they must follow instructions. This is a simple thing. People like to follow their instincts from day one. Big mistake. First, follow instructions. Okay, because once you can follow instructions, and make sure you follow simple, straightforward instructions, you learn to enact them. You do things that are repeatable over and over again with simple choices, limited choices, yes or no, left or right. You do simple things and you learn to become very competent in those areas. And most of your focus is on being able to physically do something over and over and over again. This starts to give you the confidence to start to go a bit further. When a person gets from 100 hours to 1,000 hours, they're no longer supervised. Their work is now reviewed and given feedback. So periodically you sit with your supervisor or the person who's coaching you, and they will periodically review and give you feedback. Okay? And at this point, your work is not very predictable, but it's slightly predictable. And now you're no longer following instructions, but you're following general procedures. Okay. And at this point, your work, the complexity of your work is complicated but controllable. You know what it is. It's a bit more complex, but you know what it is. You are now no longer just enacting things, you're evaluating work. You're evaluating situations a bit more. So your mindset has to switch. You're no longer just doing repeatable actions, but you're now implementing a bit of personal theory of practice and improvement. So you're trying to now practice things and improvement, whether it's you're doing a show, whether you're doing your work, whatever it is. You're now getting your skills appraised regularly. You're working in a bit more of a multifaceted environment. It's no longer one variable, yes or no, left or right. You're kind of working with a wider scale of things. And now you're starting to calculate and analyze. You're not just acting anymore. You're now analyzing your actions. You're now thinking very carefully. You're analyzing the outcomes of your actions. At this point, you're also starting to work with systems a bit more. So you're not just working like a machine anymore, you're working in a systematic fashion. Now, Stephanie, I want to warn people this point is the highest risk because at this point, you're no longer a trainee and you're not new. So, you know, when you're new, you're so scared you don't want to mess up. At this point, you become a bit confident, you can easily become arrogant. And this is where people make the biggest chunk of their mistakes in their journey at the apprentice level. And the next stage is called the journeyman. You no longer have supervision, you now have oversight. Your work is slightly unique. You're following patterns and frameworks. Things are ambiguous. In other words, you're not following things that are straightforward, but they are actionable. You're experimenting a bit. You're working with known unknowns. You're doing a bit of trial and error, trying to discover patterns in what you're doing. Now you're facing challenges. And you're dealing now not just with calculating your actions, you're dealing with what are the relationships between the things I'm doing now. If I'm doing my show, what's the relationship between how fast my audience is growing and how they're responding? And at this point, you've got a little bit more autonomy. This is also a high risk area. These are the areas where you can fall apart because you're arrogant enough to believe you know it all. But this is the point where you can really mess up. 5 years into doing something, you've passed your 10,000 hours. You are no longer supervised. You are the supervisor. You're supervising others now. You're doing very unique work. At this point, you're following principles. So now you understand the underlying principles of your work and you're doing known unknowns. You're exploring new things. You can deal in unknown areas. Now you can start following your instincts because you've built up enough understanding to now be able to follow your instincts that they cannot mislead you. Your application of skill is now in real-time situations on your own. Nobody's overseeing you. And your focus is on the principles and the purpose of your work, and your situations are real. At this point, your risk is low. So how do you get to a master, Stephanie? It takes time. So this is the process by which people actually deal with things. Just quickly, Stephanie, just to answer some of the questions that have actually come up. We have some of the answers to the question we asked. Christine Simple Quest said, we need to skill up and do more productive things online. Yes, there's too much playing around online, people. There's a bit too much playing around. Our friends in China sell $400 billion worth of retail goods. And I talked about makeup and stuff like that. They sell $400 billion worth of retail goods online. I know we're not the same size as China, but I know we're also not selling much doing lives. When we're doing lives, we're just dissing each other half the time. So it's important to start doing lives where we're doing product expos and things like that. Jonathan Ambili has asked, he's saying, will coming of Starlink improve connectivity, especially for areas not serviced by MNOs? Currently, Starlink is a bit more higher priced, but it will create a new way of reaching some of those over time. I think it's going to be quite interesting to start getting satellite internet towards underserved areas. But at the beginning, it's going to be for the middle class. And then once it establishes its base, it's going to be able to start selling into the underserved areas. We did also see Strive Masia was actually even talking about how he met with President Hichilema and how they've actually started. I think they're connecting 200 schools so far, and they're going on this huge binge to connect schools to the internet using fiber. So they found 200 schools. They said 500 schools already. They found next to their fiber lines, and they're working on connecting those already just in this year. So that's already some news that we're waiting to see coming out. And some other questions we do have here, that's for another day. Mr. Wicks Muluba is asking, do we have ETFs and index funds in Zambia? The answer is no for now. That, Stephanie, has been our Mindset Monday. And I hand it over to you as I drift away into the day.
And my takeout for the day is that in creating a habit, make sure you do it for 21 days and it's going to be that easy. We don't want to see you actually posting videos where you get to fight with people. Rather get to advertise a product and stuff like that. Until tomorrow again, Munyumba, it's bye for now.
Bye for now. Have a wonderful day. God bless to everyone.
Thank you.